Thank you, Chandni, for doing the Kirtan. Om Agyanat Timirandasya Gyananjan Shalakaya Chakshurimil Samyena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Hey Krishna Karna Sindhu Dinbandhu Jagatpate Kubesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste. Saptakanchan Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishvanuste Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंदा श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसादि गौर भक्त वृंदा हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 रामा राम राम हरे हरे. So welcome chapter 15 today. We are almost done and then 3 more days. Thank you for coming every day. It's not easy to come every day. Chapter 15 is called Purushottam Yoga, the yoga of the Supreme Person. Let's pay our obeisances to Shri Radha Govinda before we start. My Krishna. This is what we did yesterday, chapter 14, the modes of material nature. Krishna explains about conditioning of the modes, how a soul becomes conditioned when it comes in contact with the material nature, from verse 1 to 9. And he says that this knowledge of the modes is the most sublime. Idam Jnanam Upashritya. Then characteristics, action, and death in the modes from verse 10 to 18. Yada Sattve Pravardhetu. Then transcending the modes from 19 to 27 verse. Mam Chayu Avyahavicharina Bhakti Yogena Sevate. Then chapter 15. This is what we are going to study. Becoming detached from the material world. Transmigration. How a soul can elevate itself from material world to spiritual world. And Krishna is the maintainer. Krishna is the maintainer of the body, of the mind, and of the soul. And then again, summary of the Vedanta Sutras. Summary of the Vedanta Sutras will always end in Sambandha, Avidya, and Prayojan. That we studied in chapter 10 also. So, Urdhva Moolam, Sri Bhagavan Vacha. Urdhva Moolam Adho Shakham, Ashwatham Prahuravyayam, Sandamsi Yasya Parnani, Yastam Vedasa Vedavet. Krishna is comparing this world as Urdhva Moolam Adho. Urdhva Moolam means upside down banyan tree. The banyan tree which is upside down. Adho Shakham, Ashwatham Prahuravyayam. So, Supreme Personality of Godhead said that there is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upwards and branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is a knower of the Vedas. So we'll study it. So, do we have an experience where the roots are upwards and the branches are downwards? We do have an experience. Yes, if a tree is standing on a bank of a river and the river is not not disturbed, the river is still, then that reflection of the tree is upside down. So in other words, this material world is a reflection of the spiritual world. Because it is a reflection of the spiritual world, everything is upside down. So, for example, the highest level of devotional service in the spiritual world is exhibited by the gopis to Krishna. This is the highest. The conjugal love that gopis show to Krishna is celebrated. It's highest. We cannot even surpass and reach. Krishna himself says that I am indebted. So, but over here in this world, that kind of a relationship is considered the lowest. So it's upside down. Everything is upside down. So I will explain. This tree has its branches. The roots are up. So the roots is up, and from where Lord Brahma is making the planet. So the root represents Brahmaloka. Then it has its leaves, which represents the Vedic hymns. Then the fruits, which represents economic development, religiosity, sense gratification, and then liberation. The liberation. So all these fruits represents economic development, religiosity, sense gratification, liberation. The upper branches represents the upper planetary system. The lower branches represents the lower planetary system. The upper planetary system, we can see all these heavenly planets, Surya Dev, and all the Gandharvas, Kinnaras, they are all staying up. But the lower planetary system is where the animal kingdom or human beings we are staying. Okay, the twigs represent sense objects. Like that, the tree, each and every part of the tree represents something or the other. And it is very complicated. What we are doing, what a living entity is doing in this material world, is hopping from one branch to another branch to another branch. But Krishna says, cut it. Cut this tree with the weapon of detachment. You see, this devotee is cutting the tree. I will explain what I'm saying. The branches of this tree extend downward and upward, and they are nourished. You know how the root is nourished by the water, right, of a tree in this world. So this banyan tree, the root is nourished by the three modes of material nature. The twigs are the objects of senses. The tree has roots going down, and these are bound to fruitive actions of human society. So this is what I'm saying. It's a reflection. So the tree is there, and on the water it appears upside down. So the highest represents the lowest, and the root becomes upward. So the real root grows upwards, which represents Brahmaloka. Secondary roots which grow downwards represents Bhuloka, or lower planetary system. And those roots which are going downwards, they also represent subsidiary roots, pious activities which are here, and then impious activities which take one down. It's very, very complicated. I find this comparison the best. You have both on side by side, attachment and aversion, and bound by the fruitive actions of human society. The leaves, uh, the leaves represents Vedic hymns. The twigs represent sense objects. Tips of branches represents the senses. Fruits represent the economic development, religiosity, sense gratification, and liberation. The living entities involvement. What are the living entities doing in this tree? They're hopping from one branch to another, trying to taste the fruit. Up is down, down is up. Can't see how far the tree extends or where it ends. Although the living entities are eternal fragments of Krishna, still entangled very, very thickly. And the root is nourished by three modes of nature. Krishna says, cut it, cut this tree. How? The only way out of this tree is detachment. How? Detachment means what? It has three elements. Find find out a guru who can help us get detached. So find one in knowledge. Then when we find a guru, what do? Hear properly and hear about the relationship of Krishna and Supreme Personality and the living entity from the guru, a bona fide guru. Then surrender to the Lord after hearing this. Surrender to the Lord through spiritual master and understand that He is the Supreme Person. He is the Lord of the material nature. And anything that is contrary to that knowledge is illusion, and attain the eternal abode by giving up the false association. So, in other words, Krishna is comparing this world where we are right now as this complicated banyan tree. Don't try to understand the banyan tree, it will never be complete. Just get out of it. And what is the interface between spiritual world and material world? What is the interface? The interface is a desire. So some people ask, how come we came here? When we are part and parcel of Krishna and we are supposed to be in spiritual world, how did we come here? We came here because we wanted to come here. The desire, the Krishna gives an element of free will to a living entity, and we can use that free will to either align ourselves with Krishna consciousness or to go against it. Okay, so desire is a powerful weapon. And Krishna gives it, and if Krishna gives it, it's going to be powerful. Krishna is not going to give something cheap. So the real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, or where its foundation is. But with determination, one must cut down this tree with the weapon of detachment. So doing, one must seek that place from which, having once gone, one never returns, and there surrender to that Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom everything has begun and in whom everything is abiding since time immemorial. So don't try to understand. There's a chapter in 5th canto Srimad Bhagavatam. It's called Forest of Enjoyment. In Forest of Enjoyment, Vyasdev has given elaborate description about this material world. Elaborate description about what we consider as the aim of life or happiness is actually leading us deep and deep into the dense forest of material enjoyment. And how to get out of that is also written. So this is the spiritual world. Spiritual world, Goloka Vrindavan, and then Vaikuntha planets, where Krishna is in four-handed form. And here, the dark part is the material world. A devotee's business is to live in such a way and to die in such a way that we can get out of this darkness. The Sputniks or the astronomers, they cannot reach the spiritual world. They cannot. They cannot get out of the covering of the material world also only. There's got to be a specific type of a practice that gives us the eligible body to enter that world. And that practice is Krishna consciousness. And Krishna is now going to give a description about the world which he is talking about. He gave the description now of where we are right now. Now he's going to tell where we should be. If I want to chant this, Natad Bhashyate Surya.
Yes, Mataji. न तद्भासयते सूर्यः न शशाङ्को न पावकः यद्गत्वा न निवर्तन्ते तद्धाम परमं मम.
Thank you. That abode of mine is not illumined by sun or moon, nor by electricity. One who reaches it never returns to material world. So once we reach Vaikuntha or Goloka Vrindavan, we don't come back. And that world is self-illuminated. Mam evansha jivaloke, jiva bhuta sanatana. Manashashta indriyani prakriti sthani karshiti. It's a very powerful verse. Mama eva ansha. Ansha means part. Mama means mine. So Krishna is saying jiva loke. The living entities in this material world are my part and parcel. But they are struggling. Manashashta indriyani. The mind and the senses, they are struggling with the material nature. Okay, so he knows, he's saying that living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. We have to understand what it means. Prabhupada explained in the purport, eternal fragmental parts. Done. We don't become one with Krishna ever. He's saying it because we are eternally fragmented. We are eternally fragmented. So when it's not that, okay, now we are fragmented, now we are separated as a separate person. And then when we go to Krishna, we become merged in him. No. He's saying it, my eternal fragmental parts. We eternally remain a separate living entity in relationship to Krishna. Mana Shashta Indriyani, due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with 6 senses which include mind. Prakriti Sthani Karshiti. Okay, so he's giving his status that he is the creator and we are created and we eternally remain created. We never merge with the creator. Then how come we are transmigrating in this material world? How come we are here? We are here, Krishna said that the interface is desire. Okay, then how is this world? Krishna compared this world to a thick banyan tree, which is upside down. And I can be going from one branch of the tree to another branch, but that's not my business. My business is to get out of this tree and get to the spiritual world. And now he's going to say that how come we are going from one body to another body? First, he is bringing it to our awareness that we're not supposed to be in the material world. And then he's saying that even if somebody is sitting in the material world, they are still going from one body to another body. How? How is that happening? Let's see that. Yes, if I want to chant, Shariram yadavapnoti.
शरीरं यदवाप्नोति यच्चाप्युत्क्रामतीश्वरः गृहीत्वैतानि संयाति वायुर्गन्धानि वाशयात्.
Thank you. The living entity in the material world carries its different conceptions of life from one body to another as the air carries aroma. So we carry the conception. What it means is that once the living entity enters the body of a dog, the living entity is convinced that I am dog and my business is to bark. It's convinced. It doesn't even try to get out of this conception. Or when a living entity is sitting in the body of a human being, it is convinced. It's convinced that yes, I am a human being. Yes, I am a member of this particular family. Yes, I belong to this society. Yes, I belong to this country. That conviction or conception goes on. When the conception goes on from one body to another body, we are carrying it. A fish is convinced that I'm a fish. We cannot tell a fish, no, you're not a fish, you're a supreme, you are a soul, part and parcel of Krishna. No, somehow it becomes like we become very, very comfortable in the place where we are situated, because we become convinced with our situation or our concept of that particular life. We don't try to come out. My Guru Maharaj gives an example. He was in UK, he was preaching, and after the class, one Mataji came to him with her husband, and she was saying, Maharaj, you said that we're not the body, we're the soul, and the function of the soul is to surrender to Krishna. And the most sublime method to surrender to Krishna is by chanting Hare Krishna. But Maharaj, don't you think that I am a female soul and my husband is a male soul? So see, we're convinced. This conception is convinced that yes, I am a male, I'm a female, I'm a child, I am old person, I am this, I am that. This concept goes on, but actually it's conditioning. Soul is soul. The male, female, child, or all these dog, or this plant, or these designations are external. Okay, the soul is not having any of these designations. Actually, spiritual world is explained in Brahma Samhita, where it says that we can become anything we want in service to Krishna. A soul wants to assume a form of a honeybee, which wants to smell the garland around Krishna's neck, become that. Next minute, I want to serve Krishna in the form of a tree on the a fruit on the top of a tree, then become that. So you can change. It's very, very dynamic. Soul is not static. We cannot fix ourselves with one thing. In service to Krishna, it can be anything. But we don't want to do that because we are convinced. Yeah, we are convinced. But why are we convinced? Because we are carrying this concept from one lifetime to another lifetime. And we're not trying to get out of this. So that is why we think that, okay, um, I have a superiority over someone else because I am this and that and this and that. No. Because a living entity, thus taking gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, tongue, and nose, sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. So about the sense objects that every living entity gets is centered around the situation of its mind. So if a mind is attached to activities of a hog, then the body we will get the body, that particular person will get the body uh, centered around their own concept of mind of a hog, and then they will get particular type of ears, particular type of eyes, particular set of sense of touch, tongue, or nose. So hog can eat anything, right? Anything you give it stool, it will eat. A human being will not do it. Why? Because their senses are arranged separately. And how come that happened? Because that living entity was associating with the modes of nature, which was in alignment with his desires, mode of ignorance, more specifically. Okay, so a person becomes a human being. How come? Because that person had well, human being is a special form because of agyata sukriti, because we are because we did some pious activity in agyata, no, unknowingly. Some soul does pious activities and accumulates his life after life after life, and then gets a human form of body. Because human form of body is the only platform where one can become Krishna conscious very easily. Very easily. It's very easy for a human being to chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Very easy, relatively, to read the scriptures, to associate with the devotees, to have to use the intelligence and time in service to Krishna. So the human form has different kind of set of all these senses and sense objects. Dog has different. How come? Because it's centered on the mind. Adhishtaya manas. So mind is the center where all these desires are coming from. We have to be very, very careful that what desire am I feeding to my mind? Because then I am responsible. I can be I can fake around in this particular life that I am so this, I am so that. But Krishna is really noticing the real nature of the mind. Okay, utkramantam sitham vapi bhunjavan va gunanvitam vimudhananu pashyanti jnana chakshusha. Is a very nice verse. The foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spells of modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. The foolish cannot understand. The foolish tries to appreciate, not appreciate like adore, oh, we have such a nice dog, oh, this particular animal is so adorable, or what. There is nothing adorable actually, because that living entity is suffering in that body. But a person who is in knowledge can see all this. Like, for example, if I don't have a knowledge about what's going on in the engine of the car, then I don't know. I can't see. Even though the engine of the car is there right in front of me, I still can't understand what is the problem. But a mechanic who is trained can very easily see. So we have to see with the eyes of knowledge. Okay, Krishna consciousness gives us the eyes of knowledge about my own situation and the situation of others. The endeavoring transcendentalist who is situated in self realization can see all this clearly. But those who are not situated in self realization cannot see what is taking place, though they may try to. This is the Shamshan Vairagya. They may try to. When somebody goes to cremation ground and sees somebody's cremation going on, for that particular moment, they become a renunciant. That really the body has um, no eternal existence. The body is going to be finished one day. So they become where they talk like a renunciant, and then they act like a renunciant for a few days. That ultimately the soul is more important. They talk like that, but after a few days, it's again gone. It goes away. After a few days, oh, this is too much. This is too much. Let me just relax. Let me watch something on the TV, or give me some nice tea or coffee to drink, because they can't sustain. They cannot sustain their meditation or renunciation. Why? Because they are not situated in self-realization. That realization was superficial. It's not matured yet. But endeavoring transcendentalist who is sincere can actually see. They can see. The splendor of the sun, which dissipates the darkness of this whole world, comes from me. And the splendor of the moon and the splendor of the fire is also from me. So now Krishna is going to talk about how he is the maintainer. He maintains the body, he maintains the gross body, the subtle body, and he also maintains the soul. So he is maintaining the gross body by giving us the sun and moon. Without sun, there cannot be any fire, and without fire, no one can be sustained. We need fire inside our own body to sustain the body, right? We need the acid production in the stomach, and that is the element of the fire quality, fiery quality of the body. So Krishna is maintaining like that. Gam avishya cha bhutani dharyayami aham ojasa pushnami chaushadhi sarva soma bhutva rasatmakam. I enter into each planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit. I become the moon and thereby supply juice of life to all vegetables. How he is maintaining the gross body? By giving us the planet. How are the planets rotating in their orbits? The astronomers have not been able to understand that yet, but Krishna is saying it because I enter into it. Because there is spirit inside the orbit, inside the planet, sorry. So such a heavy planet is rotating in the middle of the sky. How come it became so light that it is rotating in the sky? How come? Because Krishna entered it. So Prabhupada gives example of a dead body and a living body. A living body is light. It can float on water. But a body, after the soul leaves the body becomes heavy and gets submerged. Later it comes up because of decomposition, but initially it goes down. Why? Because the soul left the body, which was making it light. So spirit makes everything light. Krishna consciousness means light, light life. It's not that no heaviness. There's no heaviness in Krishna consciousness. Why? Because Krishna enters the life. As Krishna is maintaining these big planets are rotating around their orbits in the sky. In the air, they are rotating. How come? How come? We don't, we take it for granted. We get so much engrossed in our life, we forget to appreciate the things around us. That how come there's such a big fireball is on the sky? Earth is rotating, right? How come? Because Krishna has entered. And then Prabhupada said someone can do research on it. I become the moon and thereby supply juice of life to all vegetables. So all the taste of all the vegetables is because of the moon. So Prabhupada has said this. You can do research that how the vegetables are getting different tastes. Krishna says this. Okay, so he's maintaining our body. He's maintaining all more. He maintains our gross body by this. Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva Praninam Deham Ashritaha Pranapana Samayukta Pachami Annam Chaturvidham. I am the fire of digestion in every body. In every living body, there is a fire of digestion. And Krishna says, I am that fire. And I am the air of life, outgoing and incoming, by which I digest the 4 kinds of foodstuffs. Amazing, right? The food we eat is digested by the gastric fire in conjunction with the air, the life air which goes in and out of the body. And Krishna says that I am dead body. Even if you can put the food inside, it will not get digested. Why? Because the fire is absent, the life is absent. Where did it come from? Krishna. And then he says, how does he maintain our mind and also our soul? Sarvasya chaham hridhi sannivishto matta smriti jnanam apohanam cha vedeshcha sarver ahameva vedyo vedantakrit vedavit eva chaham. Sarvasya chaham hridhi sannivishto means I am seated in everyone's heart. So Krishna is maintaining the soul because the soul is in the heart and Paramatma is sitting with the soul, maintaining the soul. Without Paramatma, the soul also cannot be maintained. Then how does he maintain the mind? Matta smritir jnana pohanam cha. So smritir means memory, jnanam means knowledge, and remembrance is matta. So remembrance means that whatever we know, we just need to be reminded of it. We know it already. Smriti, I'm sorry, that's Smriti. And then knowledge means something which is new. I did not know that before. Now I learn a new skill. So that skill, that knowledge is given by Krishna. Forgetfulness, we forget so many things here and there, is also given by Krishna. So Krishna gives all these things: remembrance of what we already know, knowledge of something new that we do not have an experience of. Forgetfulness is what we know but we forgot. This is how he maintains our subtle body, mind and intelligence. And then how does he maintain the soul? By all the Vedas, I am to be known. Vedescha sarve ahameva vedyo. So I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedantas. Vedantakrit Vedavit eva chaham. He is the compiler and the knower of the Vedas. So Vyasdev is the literary incarnation of Krishna. So in the incarnation of Vyasdev, he writes all the Vedas, he compiles all the Vedas. And then he is the knower of the Vedas. And he is the ultimate aim of the Vedas. Somebody is saying that we are very Veda Vitrata, we are very knowledgeable in Vedas, then it automatically should mean that they have understood that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, so understood. So far we have studied that the material world and spiritual world. The material world is a reflection of a spiritual world, like a banyan tree which is upside down. And a living entity in the material world is actually part and parcel of Krishna. Mama evansha eva ansha jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana. But we're struggling very hard with six senses centered around the mind. The mind, the conditioned mind has desires, the bijam, the desires to enjoy the world. The mind gives signal to the mouth, to the eyes, see this, then we are forced to say it. Mind gives signal to the ears, hear this, Okay, we are forced to hear. So like that, mind is using the senses to enjoy the world. So the Krishna consciousness is the training of the mind. And so far, what did we study? That how Krishna maintains our subtle body, gross body, and the soul. He maintains our gross body by becoming sun and moon, by becoming the fire of digestion and the air of life, by also giving us the vegetables. By becoming moon, he supplies the taste to the vegetables, which sustains the body, the gross body. And what about the subtle body, mind, intelligence? And he gives smitir, matta smitir jnanam. He gives the remembrance, the forgetfulness, and the knowledge. And how does he maintain the soul? By giving us the Vedic knowledge. In fact, he's the end of the Vedas, he's the compiler of the Vedas, and he's the knower of the Vedas. But Krishna is now going to talk about little bit more about the spiritual world. So he's saying there are two classes of beings, the fallible and the infallible. The word uses shara and akshara. In the material world, every entity is fallible. And in the spiritual world, every entity is infallible. So if I ask, maybe one person can raise a hand or someone can, what is the meaning of fallible and infallible? What does it mean, fallible and infallible? Yes, Uday Prabhu, yes, you can unmute. What does it mean, fallible and infallible?
Fallible, one who does mistake. Infallible, one who does not do mistake.
Mistake of what?
I mean, I don't know. Anything against Vedas or some set of rules that have been created.
Yeah.
So fallible is one who are able and they're likely to do the mistakes. Infallible, they don't do mistakes.
Okay, thank you very much. So fallible in the sense that we are separated from Krishna. So one who has been separated from Krishna is fallible. And infallible is and living entities are the living entities who are in the spiritual world with Krishna. They don't come back. They don't come down to the spiritual world. They never fall down from their position of being Krishna's part and parcel. The living entities in this world have fallen from their original position of understanding and functioning as Krishna's part and parcel. Okay, so beside these two, there is the greatest living personality, the Lord Himself, who has entered into these worlds and is maintaining them. So Krishna, the fallible and infallible, Shara and Akshara. Fallible is Shara and infallible is Akshara. But Krishna is saying that He is even beyond Shara and Akshara. He's the creator of both. So beyond or besides this, there is the greatest living personality, the Lord Himself, who has entered into these worlds and is maintaining them. So Krishna is maintaining the conditioned soul, and Krishna is also maintaining the liberated soul. Krishna remains the maintainer, and we remain as maintained by Krishna. That relationship never changes. Okay, that one has to understand, because then otherwise we'll have vague ideas. How come? Okay, once I go to Krishna, do I become one with Krishna? No, we still remain maintained by Krishna. That is a relationship, because Krishna is not under the category of Akshara or fallible or Akshara or infallible. Then what is Krishna? Adhokshaja, beyond both. Okay, so Yasmat Sharam Atito Aham Aksharad Api Chottamaha Ato Asmi Loke Vedecha Pratitaha Purushottamaha. Besides, I am transcendental, beyond both fallible and infallible. And because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as the Supreme Person. So Sharam and Aksharam, both beyond that. Ato Asmi Loka Vedecha Pratihita Purushottamaha. I am Purushottamaha means I am beyond both, and I am celebrated. Someone may say Krishna is very proud. Again, somebody will think Krishna is not proud. Krishna is clearing his position as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We become proud. We think that he's proud. You know why we think that he's proud? Because of the element of envy. Envy means I like what you have, but I don't like the fact that you have it. That this kind of question only comes in the mind of a conditioned soul. Arjuna is not a conditioned soul. Arjuna is liberated soul. So Arjuna enjoys hearing about it. And Arjuna tells Krishna, tell me more, tell me more, tell me more. But a conditioned soul thinks that Krishna is so proud. Krishna is not proud. I have element of envy against Krishna. That I like Krishna has all this. But I don't like it that Krishna has it. I should be the one having it. So this kind of things in a very, very subtle way come from that kind of understanding. But that Arjuna is not envious. That is why Krishna is very comfortable telling him all these secrets. So Krishna is beyond. This is Brahma Vimuha Leela in 10th canto Srimad Bhagavatam. And Brahma stole Krishna's friends and animals. And in the evening, everyone had to go back home, and Krishna did not want the Vrindavan residents to get distressed by the absence of the children and animals. So Krishna expanded himself into all those boys and animals which were stolen by Brahma. And when Brahma comes back and he sees that everything is as it is. He thought that Krishna is not God. He was testing Krishna's supremacy. Krishna is not God, so everything will be in a distress. But he saw everything was as it is. Then he offers prayers to Krishna. Sorry. And then he asks Krishna to reveal his true nature. And Krishna shows that they are actually all expansions of his own self, all the boys and animals. So that is Krishna's position. Okay, so everyone is worshipping Krishna, and this is Krishna's pure devotee, Garuda, who carries him all around wherever he wants. Krishna can go anywhere he wants, but Krishna gives a chance to a devotee to serve because he wants to serve. Krishna is worshipped by everyone, because he's the object of love for all these. You see, for us, um servant means to a leadership which is not caring, to a leadership which is based on the business transaction. So that is the reason why the concept of being servant of Krishna is so hard for a living entity to understand, because they are trying to understand that concept from their own experience. That how can I have a relation with Krishna where there is this transaction? No, it's not that kind, because it's upside down. Everything is perverted. Krishna is not that kind of a leader. Krishna is very caring, and Krishna is maintaining. He already cleared his position. I am maintaining your gross body, your subtle body, your soul. I am eternally maintaining you, even if you are in the conditioned life or in the liberated life or with me in the spiritual world. He's clearing, but we don't realize why, because we have uh, the thick concepts of our own lives around us. But the pure devotees don't. They don't have it. They don't have any reservation in surrendering to Krishna. They understand their position, and they understand the affection that Krishna has and they have for him. That is why they are always surrendering. And they're celebrating their surrender. And they are happy to bring everyone else on also to that level. Like Lord Shiva, as I speak a lot about him, right? Or Indra, this is Indra. They adore anyone who speaks about Krishna. And they themselves are speaking about Krishna so much. One has to read Srimad Bhagavatam, and we can understand how Lord Shiva is instructing his wife, his prachetas, or so many devotees in Srimad Bhagavatam about the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and glories of the relationship between the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the living entity. Brahma, whenever there is a distress, whenever there is some disturbance in the man in his creation, and he can't figure out the problem, he does not hesitate to go and ask help from Krishna. All the big demigods go with Brahma. Lord Shiva is there, Mother Bhumi in the form of the cow is there, or Indra is there. Everybody goes with him, and they understand. Now, that was the sambandha, that Krishna is created. Krishna is creator, and I am created, and I am maintained, and he is the maintainer. So sambandha is established in avideya. Avideya means, and what is the activity of that relationship? Vibha, I have not given you a chance in a long time. You want to chant? Yo mam evam asamuddho. Is she there? Okay, yo mam
Yes,
evam.
Mataji.
Okay.
Yo mamevam यो माम् एवम् असमुद्धो जानाति पुरुषोत्तमं स सर्वविद् भजति मां सर्वभावेन भारत.
Very nice, thank you. So this is the Abhideya, the advanced knowing that I am maintained and Krishna is the maintainer. Then what happens? Whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead without doubting is to be understood as the knower of everything. And he therefore engages himself in full devotional service, O son of Bharata. So that particular person will be engaged in the service to Krishna because they are fully realized. They just don't know for the sake of knowing, they're realized about the relationship. So there is an engagement now after the realization. This is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures. O sinless one, and it is now disclosed, it is disclosed now by me. Whoever understands this will become wise, and his endeavors will know perfection. This knowledge of Krishna, that I am maintained and Krishna is the maintainer, and Krishna maintains my gross body, my subtle body, my soul, and Krishna maintains me eternally, not just now, but eternally. Ever since I'm created, eternally He's been the maintainer, and I am maintained. So my duty is to serve Him, and He takes care. He will take care of me. He has been. So who knows this? What is the prayojan? We'll know perfection and we'll end up with Krishna. So this is the chapter. It's a small chapter. Please go back and read. It's a very nice chapter, Purushottam Yuga. We had Purushottam Mass this year, right? October. We chanted this chapter whole month. So becoming detached from the material world. 15.1 to 15.5. Ashanga Shastrena Dridena Chitva. Cut it. Cut this branch. Cut this tree with the weapon of detachment. So Krishna first describes that this world is compared to upside down. And then transmigration. How is a living entity transmigrating from one body to another body? I discussed that we are carrying our concept of life, one life to another life to another life. What does it mean? When a soul enters the body of a particular material body of a particular living entity, for example, Srila Prabhupada gives example of a dog. So it becomes convinced, the soul becomes convinced that I am a dog, I have to bark, right? There's no knowledge. Or if I enter the body like in the human being, I'm convinced that I'm a human being. It is my duty to do this and this and this. So we become very bewildered and confused and convinced about our situation. And then we go on transmigrating. So Pashyati Jnana Chakshusha, a person in knowledge can see. Jnana Chakshusha. Chakshusha means eyes and Jnana means knowledge. Pashyati means understand. One whose eyes are in understanding, are decorated with the understanding, they can see that this is happening. That is why we need a guru. They can see. So Krishna maintains everything from verse 12 to 15, that he maintains the gross body, the subtle body, and the soul. And then the summary of the Vedanta Sutras, where 15.17 is that Mam Eva Ansha Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanadana, that we are eternally fragmented part and parcel of Krishna. And Krishna is eternally the maintainer. So one who knows this becomes engaged in full devotional service without reservation, and the endeavors will know perfection. Iti Guhya Tamam Shastram, the most confidential knowledge about Krishna. Okay, so we already shared the links of what continuation classes you are all welcome to join. And I will ask now Anishta Prabhu's team to send me the link to what he will be doing. So if my thing doesn't suit you, then you can join him. It should be fine. I thought I had the poll. Anyway, I'm gonna ask this question then once again. One more time follow up. Can you answer me this question? I have asked this question before, but I want to know if the numbers are higher now or lower now or same now. How many of you have started chanting Hare Krishna after attending this course? Yes, I am chanting daily at least one round of Maha Mantra. Yes, I'm chanting but not counting. I'm thinking about it seriously, but I have some questions. Not yet chanting yet. Not yet started. It's not stated. I was chanting the Mahamantra before coming, and I'm an initiated devotee in ISKCON. Few more seconds. Okay. 62% of the classes voted. Okay, I'm gonna end the polling. So 67% of the class voted incomplete. So most of the people are still the same, like chanting but not counting. Okay, but eventually try to have an aim of coming to the platform of counting also, because that's what the prescription is from Srila Prabhupada. I'm chanting at least one round of Mahamantra daily. So thank you. No one, okay. No, I have not started chanting yet. 16 people. Okay, thank you for coming to the course. But if there's any question about the chanting, then please don't hesitate to bring it up. I was chanting the Mahamantra even before coming to the course. Thank you. I am an initiated devotee in ISKCON. 2 people. Please accept my humble obeisances. I think we can make the breakout rooms. Are you here? Rupa Mataji and Sita Mataji is here. Okay.
Yes, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. So I am going to bring you back both in 10 minutes, okay?
Okay.
And whoever is staying.
Hare Krishna, Radhika. Please go ahead. Hare Krishna. Please go ahead and raise your hand or unmute yourself if you have a question. Shivamani Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Now, before I came for these classes, I always thought that when we say Hari refers to Vishnu or Krishna and Hara refers to Shiva. But here you see we're chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. And then Hare, at the end you say Hare Hare. So is there a difference? Is Krishna known as both Hari and Hara?
I'm not, I apologize, Mataji, I'm not really clear. Radhika, you might chime in if you know it. There was I don't know if you received the reference of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, what the 18 syllables mean. If you can tell me which group you're in, I can resend it to you. Do you know which
16 syllable or 18?
It's the total words, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So there was a PDF sent about the reference to each of those there. But I have not read the reference of Lord Shiva in that. So I might send that to you and you can, read through the entire reference about what does each syllable mean. But one of the lectures that I have learned is it's about just the glory of Krishna. It can also refer Radharani, which is, the eternal love of Lord Krishna. But I've not read the reference of Lord Shiva in it. So it is quite a detailed description about the entire Mahamantra, and I can share that with you.
Thank you.
What group are you in, Mataji?
What do you mean group?
So on your WhatsApp, you're part of a WhatsApp group. What is the last number on the end of your group? So if you check
I've not noticed it. I've not noticed that. Sorry, I've not noticed that.
So are you in a WhatsApp group though?
Yeah. I get all my messages. Yeah, I get all my messages. Just
check the last number. Just check on your WhatsApp group. Just check the last number and I can send it to you.
Yeah, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so just to add what you told, I totally understand. As Sita Mataji had told, it's Hari here refers to the energy potential Radha. What you are talking is Hara. Shiva is referred as Hara, and I think it is mentioned in, Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, I think about 20, verse 20, 20, 21. So in that, what you're saying is mentioned. Shiva is Hara, but this is not Hara, it's Hare, H-A-R-E. And Shiva is H-A-R-A. So that's why in Shiva songs, you'll have Mahadeva.
Oh, Hara, okay.
Hara.
Hara
Right?
Hara Mahadeva. Is it Hara
That's right.
Hara? Yeah, Hara. That's
That
right.
is
Okay.
H-A-R-A. This is H-A-R-E.
Thank you.
I hope I've clarified.
Thank you. Sita
Thank you.
Mataji, mine says January 4 in English 3 p.m. 11. Is that what you mean?
Yes, I got that. I'll send it over
11.
to you on the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody
Krishna.
else have a question? I see Shivamani. Please go ahead.
Sulochana.
Oh, sorry. I apologize. You already got it. Go ahead.
Devotee. Yeah, devotee Sulochana. Can you unmute yourself?
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I have a doubt. Should the lights be on in the Krishna's altar at night, even after we go to sleep?
That's a good one.
Is it proper?
I don't know a correct reference, but the lights in my puja room are on just because I keep it on. But I don't know if there is a reference. Radhika, would you know of anything? If it's
I'm not sure. I think we'll take this question back to ma'am in the main room.
yeah, we'll let you know.
Thank you so much.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anybody else that has a question?
Devotee Sharad, can you please unmute yourself? Yeah.
Yes, I wanted to ask about this inverted tree. Why is it called inverted? Why? What is the significance? Can you throw some light on the same? Thank you.
Do you want to take a shot at Radhika, and then I'll chime in if I have more?
What's your question? Why is it inverted in the material world?
What the inverted signifies? Why is it called inverted tree? Because is there some significance to the same, or why is it described like inverted? And I could not understand. That is why.
Okay, so the desired tree, what is aspired there in the Goloka or Krishna is the topmost in terms of everything. And just to give two examples, and servant over there is considered as the highest. Inverted tree is because the earth is a mirror image, because it's not the real one. So it is treated as a mirror image, and mirror image is always upside down. And when it's upside down, it also signifies that the least whatever is there as in whatever we call as the bhumi, that is the earth, is, or the material world, is the highest. Example is servant. Servant is the least, right? We always not look down, but then that's the least relationship one would like to have. And that's the highest over there. So in one line, if I have to answer your question, what is earth? Earth or the material life? In the material world, whatever is there in the spiritual world, it's exactly the opposite. Because we've desired to come to the material world. So God has given a very similar image of that for us to play. It's just like kids, when they want to, when the kids are 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, we give a pseudo image of the cooking vessels. So it's the same kind of a thing which God has created and given in the material world. So everything over there, you don't give the real fire to the child, but you pretend as if it's true. So that's the same pretense in terms of context, if I may say. Did I answer your question? This is the best help.
A little bit I could.
So Sharad Prabhu, very simply, Radhika Mataji is here given a lot of references. So think about it. What it could also, I apologize, there's a lot of background noise. So just like our mirror, I am an individual, but when I look at my mirror image, is that a true image? Is that another person, or is it just a false impression of me, right? Similarly, whatever is in the material existent is not actually true, because it's a reflection of what is going on in the spiritual world. Once we come to the understanding, then we will, try and look for, where is that happiness? Where is that thing that we have to go to? A very good example of that would be, there was a story, and I might chime in a little bit later with that reference of the story. Very simply, there was a parent who was coming to the initiation of his only son, who was taking who was taking sannyas. So the dad was very, very angry because he was blasting the gurus that were giving him initiation, saying, "You're brainwashing my child. And what is happening is you're just distracting him to come into the sannyas. You're just completely brainwashing my child." So the speaker keeps listening to him, and at the end asks him, "I completely understand what you're saying, but think about it. If I give you an opportunity, or if I give you a choice to say, I want to give you one happiness where, that happiness keeps increasing every day. And he said, sure, I would like to have that. So the speaker tells the father, why do you want to have that? Because you've never really had it. So the dad keeps thinking is like, okay, why would I wish to have that happiness? The speaker then comes back and says, like, what we are living in this material world, we keep looking for happiness in different places because we've had that happiness. And what is that happiness? Is to be in constant service of Krishna. We are all part and parcel of Krishna, but we have always been, as a soul, an eternal servitor of Krishna. But since we have come out of there, we keep looking for this happiness. We look for happiness in our family, we look for happiness in our children. But we never find that. Like, the best thing about that is, like, you buy a phone and you think that is going to cause happiness, but what really causes the happiness is the conversation you have with them. So a long answer to your question is, we are constantly looking for it because what we have is not true. And that is what is a symbolic reflection of the mirror image. Are you there, Prabhu?
Yes, Mataji, thank you.
Just keep reading, Prabhu. You'll understand. Who is unmuted?
Thank
I'm
you
just
so
going to
much.
mute all here. 1 second.
Yeah. Devotee Sheshagiri, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Mataji, actually, it's regarding the course which is going to start from February 1st again. Yeah, I'm intending joining again because, I came across a post also that for children in the age group of 8 and 15, I think by Mangalore ISKCON temple only it is, they're going to conduct the course for children also, age group 8 to 15. Now, what I'm trying to understand is, how will they be taught? Because we being adults, I mean, in my case, it's quite heavy. I'm taking time to understand the Gita and all that. How will they teach the children so that, I can suggest to my grandchildren,
Sure,
so how is it
Mataji.
going?
They are not taught in that much detail, but believe me, they have a capacity a lot more to learn than I think at least I do. I can speak for myself. But the courses there are more interactive. They're given some assignments. They're taught at their level. There are different PowerPoint presentations that are given to give that reference. So it is catered towards them, and you should see. I don't know if you ever had the opportunity to participate in a lot of those programs that we have conducted through ISKCON Mangalore. All those children that you see who are chanting the verses, they all have just attended these classes. Their capacity to learn is a lot more than ours.
Right. I think on Sankranti Day or something, we didn't have a class, and I did join that group. My God, so many the children. Basically, I've seen mostly from, from Hyderabad. They're all. It was so cute seeing those children.
So don't underestimate them. They have a lot more capacity than we do.
I know. What I want to know also, what time would be suitable? Now you have told me that it's going to be very easy and interactive for the children. My granddaughter, first I'll have to convince my daughter, because, put her for the class. I want them also to be for the adult class. I'll try my best. They are busy, ma'am. They are in Charlotte. So what time would be suitable for them?
What group are you in, Mataji? I can send you a link for the children's class separately to you if you're interested. What group number are you in?
And especially they are in Charlotte now. They are having work from home schools. So what time would be convenient? I can suggest to them. I'm in group number. 1 second. 1 second. I'm in. It's 3 p.m. Number is 14.
Okay. I will send it over, Mataji.
Yeah, so that I can send it across to my daughter. Sure. And time suitable there. It's North Carolina. You're from Chicago, right?
Yes, Mataji.
Yeah.
Mataji.
So thank you so much.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Mataji, so sorry to disturb. There is no one in the other breakout room. I just joined. but then there were devotees saying that they have a few more questions.
In that one, Mataji? In that one,
Yes.
Vibha?
Yes.
Rupa Mataji should be there. Radhika, would you mind taking this and I can go in that room?
Yeah, sure. Please go ahead.
So I'll wait for.
Hare Krishna, I am so sorry. I didn't realize there was nobody here. I was in the other room. Did anybody have a question?
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
I got a question.
Please go ahead.
Ma'am, I have tried to convince my friend to
Yash, you are muted again.
So ma'am, my question is, do we need any particular age to chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra and to read Bhagavad Gita?
No, no, Yash Prabhu, there is no age limit. You should start as early as you can. And I think you muted with the first portion. Were you trying to see if you can convince your friends to come? Is that what was one of your questions?
Yes, ma'am, but they don't want to join this because they think that this is not the right time to join such things and to chant these mantras.
Yeah, don't worry about them, Yash. They will come. You keep practicing what you can, and we all work on ourselves first, and then based upon the improvement that people will see in you, they will come and ask you. So keep doing what you're doing. Thank you so much for chanting and attending.
Thank you, ma'am. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
The child is a person, is a body, and the gross and the gross, subtle, and the soul.
It's a person, right?
Yes.
Why? How come it's a person? Because the child's parents are person. Now go to grandparents. How the mother and father are persons? Because their parents are persons. How these grandparents are persons? Because their great-grandparents are persons. So go to the original person, and the name of the chapter itself is Purushottam Yoga, the supreme person. Yoga of the supreme person. So the origin of the soul is person, then how can soul be impersonal? Logically thinking, how can something which is coming from a person be impersonal? It's a person.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yes, Uday Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Namaste, Mataji.
Hare
You
Krishna.
mentioned that the soul, with the soul, also is Krishna inside the heart. So apparently everyone has one Krishna within the soul. So when someone is doing both good things and the bad things, so are you telling Krishna is in witness to that, and probably he is probably just leaving it as it is, not preventing it?
Krishna, we discussed this. So your understanding is correct that Krishna is sitting in the heart. He says here, right? Matta sarvasya cha aham hridi sannivishto. So I am sitting in everyone's heart. So the Paramatma feature of Krishna is sitting in the heart with the soul. And what is the function? The function of the Paramatma is Upadrishta Anumanta. 13th chapter we discussed it. Upadrishta, overseer, Anumanta, permitter. He is giving us the freedom to choose. We have the interface between the spiritual world and the material world we saw today is the desire of the living entity. When Krishna gives something, he gives it in its true sense. I'll give you an example. I always give this example whenever someone asks this question in these classes. Let's say that my son, okay, now I tell him that because I am your mother and because I'm your origin, because I love you so much, I want you to get up and go and take shower now. Okay, he does it. Then he comes down and then I tell him, okay, now because I'm your mother and because you are my source, now I tell you, eat your breakfast. And after you eat your breakfast, wash your plate. After you wash your plate, go and sit in your classroom for 2 hours. After the 2 hours are over, you come back to me and sit with me because we need to talk. After we talk, because I love you, all in the name of love, okay? Because I love you, my son, you do this and this. So my son will tell me, Mom, can you please stop loving me?
Yeah.
So the freedom is very important element of a relationship. The independence is to choose is a very important element. So Krishna gives this freedom. Okay, Krishna gives this freedom. So he gives it in its true sense. A little bit of a freedom is given to choose. That's all. We don't have a freedom to do work or to bring bring the elements of work, but we have a freedom to desire.
So in other words, Krishna should not have given us this much of freedom so that people don't do bad stuff.
No, then without freedom, there is no relationship. That will be a monarchy. No. I discussed, right, the 5 ways which are needed to run any relation is like acceptance, affection, attention, appreciation, and alliance. So alliance is independence. One needs to have independence in a relationship to express their views and to be a different person.
Okay.
In any, I gave you example with my own son. Like if I am giving him such kind of love, it's choking.
Yes.
He's gonna say, I can't wait to move out, or can you stop loving me? You say his definition of love will be so. Krishna loves us, and love means giving other person a choice to choose.
And second question was, you mentioned that the banyan tree is a material world, and it is only a pure mirror reflection of a spiritual world. So when you say that, obviously the banyan tree has lots and lots of issues, challenges, pains, and sadness, everything. So are you telling, even since it's a reflection of a spiritual world, this material world, even spiritual world also will have its own quantum of pains and sadness, worriness, etc.
Yes, there are 7 secondary relations that one can have with Krishna, and those seven secondary relations are all feelings: wonder, ghastliness, anger, horror. So yes, but is it in a relationship with Krishna? So wonder, for example, when Arjuna saw universal form of Krishna, he was taken over by the wonder, so that his primary relationship of being a friend was transformed into a secondary relationship of wonder. So yes, everything is over there. That is why we have it. The origin is in Krishna, but it is now used in a very different manner. But in true sense, it is there.
So even if you go to spiritual world or Goloka Vrindavan, it's not necessary you will be 100% all-time happy.
No, that is also a kind of happiness. For example, Mother Yashoda, when she can't find Krishna, she is overtaken by anxiety. Where is my child? Right? When Trinavrata pastime happened, that Trinavrata, the tornado demon, picked up Krishna from the backyard and took him high in the sky. So we read in 10th Canto Bhagavatam that Mother Yashoda is losing her consciousness because she's very anxious and overtaken by grief. But that is also a kind of enjoyment with Krishna. Okay, but we cannot understand this with impurified senses. We have to purify ourselves to understand.
Yes,
That
yes.
is also meditation on Krishna.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Yes, Sarita Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Hare Krishna Mataji. I just got 2 questions. One is, why do we chant 16 rounds? What is the significance? And why there are 108 mankas in that? Why both of them, what relevance they have?
Yes, so 16 rounds, this question is asked very commonly. Actually, 64 rounds. Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada said standard is 64 rounds. But when Prabhupada was preaching in the Western countries, 64 rounds means 8 hours a day. So Srila Prabhupada said, okay, 64 rounds, okay, 32 rounds. Then also people were making faces, 32 rounds. Then Prabhupada decreased it to 16 rounds, and then he said no less than that. So Srila Prabhupada set up the treatment. He was the discoverer.
But there is any reasoning behind that?
I don't know. Not that I have found out, but the reasoning that works for all of us is because Prabhupada said it. For example, tomorrow you discover a treatment for a very rare disease. and you say, take this medicine 3 times a day or 4 times a day, it will work. Now, if a patient goes on asking you why 3 times, why 4 times, why this time, so it'll be
Then I
difficult.
tell the half-life of the medication. No,
no, actually, because Srila Prabhupada said, you follow this and I'll take you. We need to practice. The real prescription is 64 rounds. So Srila Prabhupada was chanting 64 rounds because he was following the order of his own spiritual master.
And relevance of 108.
Yeah, I'm trying to bring up a slide. That's what I'm doing right now. So the relevance of 108 is in my Bhakti Shastri, we studied this 108. I'm looking. Okay, I want to show you this slide. Where is this 108? Because there are 108 Upanishads, there are 108 Puranas, there are 108 so many things.
Okay.
So,
because I thought maybe 24 rounds, one round an hour of the day. But 16, I couldn't understand why it is. Because it was 24 hours, I would think 1 hour for 1 hour each round of the day.
No. It's actually the only reason because Srila Prabhupada changed it. And you can hear the lecture also. Prabhupada is saying that, all right, no less than 16 rounds.
Another one.
Yes, Mataji, go ahead. I'm just looking.
Another one thing is that if the soul goes to the Swarg or Narak, does it attain another body to suffer? How does it suffer then?
Yeah, you can read the whole Bhagavatam how it suffers, depending on what punishment they are suffering for. The punishment is different. So I'm going to show you. This is easy.
There are types of Naraks also, no? Narak also, there are types of Narak.
Why there are different types? Because there are different types of sins. So you go to fifth canto. I think in the last chapter. Yeah, description of the hellish planets. In this particular chapter, all the 7 hellish planets are described and what punishment is given in what planet. For example, if somebody is 28 hells, Tamishra, the Tamishra Ravana. So there Goswami is describing a person who steals another's money, wife or possession is put into a hell called known as Tamishra. Person who tricks someone and enjoys his wife is put into an extremely hellish condition called Andha Tamishra. Foolish person absorbed in bodily concept of life who on the basis of this principle maintains his wife and children by committing violence against other living entities is put into hell called Rav.
Hare Krishna.
Oh, yeah, so everything is written.
Let us anyway prevent now ahead. God can pardon the past and maybe ahead you don't do anything. Probably then this all can be pardoned.
By chanting Hare Krishna, Bhaktivinoda Thakur Prabhupada answers this. Antidote to all the sufferings is chant Hare Krishna, because by chanting Hare Krishna purely and attentively, one can get rid of all kinds of sinful reactions. One that we are suffering right now, one that we will suffer in immediate future, and for one whose suffering is awaiting in future lifetimes. All kinds of reactions.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, thank you. This is chapter 5. This is chapter 5.
Canto 5. Canto, I'll show again. Canto 5, last chapter of that canto. Once again. How do I go through it? Here, chapter 26. Canto 5.
Canto 5. Thank you so much.
And if you have the hard copy,
Bhagavatam.
then you can enjoy the paintings. Mataji, 108, give me some time. I'm going to have all my admins share in all the groups that slide that I'm trying to look for.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Kirti Mataji, thank you for waiting. Hare Krishna.
No problem. Hare Krishna, Mataji. It's just a simple question. During the Adhik Mas Purushottam month last year, 2020, everybody was saying that it's very auspicious to chant, to read this chapter 15 of the Bhagavad Gita, because it's called Purushottam Yoga. And I was doing that, but I also heard that when somebody has died during the prayers of their 13 days, you should also read this. I wasn't sure what the significance of that was. Why this chapter? People were saying that to me. Have you ever heard of it?
I don't know, Mataji, because I've heard chapter 2 and Garud Puran to be chanted in the 13 days of passing away of someone. I don't know about chapter 15, but in the whole, even if you read any chapter of Bhagavad Gita at any point of time, it's all auspicious.
Yes.
Bringing Krishna in someone's life at any moment is nothing less than extreme auspiciousness for anyone. So I have to ask. I'll ask and get back. I don't know.
Okay, fair enough. It's just, yeah, I've heard of specific verses like 213 and everything for the death and the soul to tell everybody that the soul is eternal and everything when people pass away. But I was a bit confused as to why chapter 15 had come up.
I don't know.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you.
Meenakshi Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Mataji, I have two questions. One is, you mentioned that the living entities in the spiritual world, they are infallible. Then my question was like, if they are, then why we got the desire to enjoy independent of Krishna, that which became the reason for us to fall down to earth or on the material world. So this question comes to my mind many times, like why we got this desire. It was so good there. Every time we enjoy, every time we are happy, we are serving Krishna, then why we got the desire to, like, you know, come out of that?
Okay, what is the other question?
So other question is the planets which you were mentioning, like so apart from Earth, scientifically we say that we don't have life on any other planet. So do we have life, because we say Krishna is there everywhere? So do we have life on other planets as well, at least in our solar system, whatever we are aware of?
Okay, so first question is that why do we get a desire? That is a very difficult question to answer, that why do we get a desire? Prabhupada said we can trace out anadi karma phala. We can trace out, but the problem is he gives example of a disease entering the body of a person. So one question will be that why did I get the disease? And another question which is more functional is, now I have a disease, how can I get rid of it? So Prabhupada gives more importance to getting rid of this mentality rather than figuring out how it came out. Because it'll be very, very hard to understand, because we are roaming around for trillions and trillions of years in this particular world. And the other question, which I will tell you anyway, because I was thinking you will ask that question, that if Krishna is saying that no one ever comes back to the material world, whoever comes to the spiritual world, then how come we came here? If we were in the spiritual world, and how did we come here? Well, because we were not in the spiritual world. We were still in Brahmajyoti, the sky around it. Someone can fall down from here, the effulgence. But once we entered the Vaikuntha or the Goloka Vrindavan, we don't come out again. But living entities who are coming to this material world are actually coming from this Brahmajyoti. They were hanging in here. So we were here. Okay. And the other question is, there is life on other planets. So Mataji, you have to choose who is your source of knowledge. Is your source of knowledge imperfect astrologer or astronomer, or a perfect Shastra? So my source of knowledge is the Shastras. And Krishna says that there is life everywhere. Everywhere. When you're standing on a sea beach, do you necessarily see all the fishes living under the ocean? Do you see them?
No.
So one can conceive that because you cannot see it with your eyes, that means there is nothing under the water. That's how our scientists are looking at this world, because they cannot see. So there is nothing there. But their seeing is so menial. They have not seen their own body. What are they going to see? Shastras tell. Everywhere there are living entities. Every single place there are living entities on the fire. They have fiery body. They're living entities on moon planet, and moon planet is one of the heavenly planets. There's so much enjoyment. One is drinking so much rust to go to moon planet. So Prabhupada questioned even the astronomers that actually they did not go to moon planet. And I was reading the documentary. Prabhupada said, he's a radio interview also from 1960, whenever this thing came out, that moon expedition. Srila Prabhupada very openly said, sitting in America, in Florida actually, that no one went. They didn't go because it is not possible. Because to enter the moon planet, there's got to be a certain type of a body. I cannot just go. So they went to somewhere in the middle, maybe Rahu, Mars, or somewhere, but not to the moon planet. Moon planet is very, very far away, further than sun. So, and then he gave another evidence, which I was so surprised. Prabhupada is so intelligent. And later on, the devotees in ISKCON also validated. And recently, people who were involved with the moon expedition, some of the scientists who recently died, right? Two scientists died last year. They were also, I was reading their documentary, also saying something on lines with what Srila Prabhupada said. Moon, I will give you some evidences. Moon planet, we say, which is, I don't know if it's true or not, but our scientists tell us its gravity is 1/6 of that of Earth, right?
Yeah, yes.
So that means that the gravity is so weak that nothing can be grounded over there. Everything should be flying around. That is why. Yeah. But then how come these people went and planted a flag over there? How did that happen? If it's supposed to fly around. And then they say that moon planet is dark. Right? These people who came back after visiting moon planet and collecting some rocks, they said it's dark. There's no light. So how come that when we see the videos of these people going up there and planting the flag, there are shadows all over? How did we see that?
Yeah, I have seen those documentaries.
So it's a scam. Because it's made up, because people want to get cheated and there are cheaters. The real way to go to the moon planet is by the Shastras, that we have to do pious activities in order to become eligible to enter there. Srila Prabhupada has spoken so many times that no one went there. Okay.
Mataji, to the first question. So the living and so God made us, right? So through I think Brahma, through Garbhodaksha, Vishnu, Brahma came, and then from there we were
That is
created.
the manufacture of the body, not the soul.
Okay.
Body.
Okay. So where the souls basically, so from where the souls are coming, you are saying like we were not at all in the spiritual world because we cannot fall down from there. We were somewhere in the Brahma Jyoti or something, right?
Right.
So this means the souls, not all the souls were created in the spiritual world, right? This means?
Brahmajyoti is a part of spiritual world, like the sky that you're looking here now when you raise your head and you see the blue sky. It is a part of this atmosphere.
Okay.
Right? So the Brahmajyoti is an effulgence from the body of Krishna. It's a part of Krishna.
Okay, got it, Mataji. Thank you.
Thank you, Krishna. Sulochana Mataji, Sita Mataji, Rupa Mataji, any question left unanswered from your class?
No, Mataji, we answered all the questions.
Okay, thank you. Sulochana Mataji, yes.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. My question is, should the lights be on at Krishna's altar at night, even after we go to sleep? Is it proper if it is on?
Okay, so in the temple, the standard is to dim them. We don't turn it off completely. In my house, I have a plugged-in a small bulb plugged into the socket. So I turn off the big lights and leave something not completely dark room. Some lamp is on, little bit.
Okay.
Is that
Thank you,
your
Mataji.
question? Okay.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Mohan Ram Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, Mohan Ram speaking. Are you able to hear? Able to hear? Okay, my question is of two parts. One is about the God created animals as well as human beings. Animals have 5 senses. They do not have free will. Am I correct?
Everybody has a free will, but go on.
Animals do not have free will. They are destined to do whatever way it has been designed. That's what I heard. That means whatever, if supposing if it gets hungry, it eats. If it doesn't feel hungry, it doesn't eat. Even a lion, it kills only when it is feeling hungry.
The extent of practice of free will can be limited, but the element of free will is always there. If you pick up a stone and try to throw it on a dog, the dog has a will power to run away, and it does that.
Okay, so that is its nature. What I'm trying to ask, my question is derivative of another actual question. Now what happens is it's a question of karma. Now whether the animals have got the karma or akarma, that means either positive karma, negative karma, anything, as per that will get another life depending on the karma, whatever the animal has done, whether it is likely to get into human being or it is likely to go down to another living being like plants or something like that.
So that's the different question. So animals do not choose their next body. Animals are going through the natural evolution given to them by the nature. So they do not, if a lion is killing another animal, it's not karma.
Exactly. That is what I'm coming to that. It is a natural instinct. It is instinct to create. Because carnivorous animal, herbivorous animal, they are all the creation of God. It is supposed to be carnivorous or herbivorous like that. So they do not have any free will to do anything, any karma of good karma or bad karma, good thing or bad karma.
You're mixing up words here. So that is causing confusion a little bit. Free will and karma are not the same thing always. Free will means independence. That's it.
Okay.
Now independence to exercise my desire, independent to exercise my activity, or independence to exercise my action. So Prabhu, independence and free will. Free will literal meaning is independence. Now the degree of independence of an animal is limited, but it is there.
It is there. As per that, you mean to say it is affected by its own karma to get another birth?
So that's another. So you're confusing two concepts here. Okay, if I may please edit a little bit. So one is free will meaning is independence. For example, if you tie a cow with a rope to a pole, now that this particular cow has independence to roam around in the perimeter of the rope.
In that limit only, yes.
Okay, it's not that it has to be like all the time hugging to the pole that you have tied to. No, it has perimeter, it has some degree of independence to go around.
Fine.
That is independence. Karma is, meaning of karma is given in 8th chapter 3rd verse. Karma means the activity which I do which leads to another material body. So they are not under the influence of the activity, because they are not at the level of consciousness that they are choosing what they can do there. Their independence is limited.
Okay.
But so free will, you have to edit your definition to independence, not karma.
Okay. Now another question is coming to the human being. The human being, because they have got a free will, they are choosing their karma depending on the activities, whatever the good activity or bad activity. Depending on that, they are likely to get another body, the lower body, higher body, or whatever it is. Is it not? Depending on the karma, whatever they are. So now what's happening is, supposing if they good karma, they do it, they are likely to go to Swarga. Bad karma, if they do it, they are likely to go to Naraka. Now, the question of Swarga or Naraka is there for good activity or bad activity. How is the question of getting to another body, either animal or any other living being? Supposing bad karma is done, some kind of animal. If good karma is done, Either same living being, same human being will be again coming with a better opportunities around if the good karma is done, or if the very good karma is done, straight away it will lead us to the Lord Krishna.
Going to Krishna is not dependent on anyone's
my question, let me repeat it for the clarification. Suppose good karma leads to Swarga, bad karma leads to Naraga. Now, where is the question of another birth of another animal or another living being comes? Karma's action is taken care of by Swarga and Naraga. Why is the question of taking another birth comes of some other animal or some other living being?
I don't think I'm understanding, but I will try to say something and then you can tell me if that makes sense.
Huh.
You are saying that this particular human being on earth,
Exactly,
okay,
yes.
is doing some pious activity, not devotional, pious activity,
Okay.
which is called good karma.
Yes.
So they have become eligible to go and enjoy heavenly planets.
Yes.
But if they are doing impious activities or vikarma or forbidden action, then they need to be punished in the hellish planets.
Yes, yes.
Okay, now, so when they go to the heavenly planets, then they enjoy the heavenly planets, and when they cash out their karma, then they again come back to the earth to now again open another account of karma and go
as a
from
human
there.
being, they come again back to earth as a human being.
So that is explained by Prabhupada in 8th chapter, 6th and 7th verse. I think I have brought it up before in the class too. Intricacies of karma are very hard to understand. So my personal life is not dedicated to understand these intricacies. I just want to go to Krishna.
Okay.
Here, Prabhupada explains when someone's, where is it? One second, Prabhu, I'm going to open my book. When someone's account is exhausted in the heavenly planets, then that person comes as a drop of rain to the earth.
A drop of rain to the earth.
Yes, and then the rain becomes a grain.
Okay.
And the grain is eaten by cow.
Okay.
And the cow makes the milk. The person drinks the milk and becomes an emulsified secretion in the person's body. And then through the medium of that emulsified secretion of the body of a human being, it goes to another human being's body.
Yes, all this process scientifically, whatever you are explaining, I am able to understand. My question is very specific. Supposing if the good pious activity, karma is exhausted, he comes down from the Swarga to the earth. Okay, the process you have explained. Now I am asking how, because sometimes the person takes life as another animal or another living being. How does it take place? Because karma exhausted, he comes back to earth as a human being again. Where is the question of taking the life as another living being?
No, not necessarily as a human being. Who says
not necessarily as a human being? No, because what? Not necessarily as a human being. You mean he will take birth as another living being, also as a human being?
When somebody falls from the heavenly planets, then it comes as rain and then grain and then there's a form, right? Rain.
That process, not process, scientific process you are telling, I am 100% understanding. I am asking a spiritual question wherein now his pious activity, whatever the plus points he has got, he has exhausted in Swarga. He comes back to the earth. Like a rain, everything, all this process you have explained. Now he comes back to earth. Now he is zero, nullified karma. He takes birth again as a human being only, or he takes birth as another living being. If at all he takes birth as another living being.
Why don't you read what I've highlighted? Can you please read it to us?
In the process of sacrifice, the living entity makes specific sacrifices to attain specific heavenly planets and consequently reaches them. When the merit of sacrifice is exhausted, the living entity descends to earth in the form of rain, then takes the form of grains, and the grains are eaten by man and transformed into semen and impregnates a woman, and thus living entity once again attains the human form to perform sacrifice and so repeat the same cycle. In this way, living entity perpetually comes and goes in the material path. The Krishna conscious person, however, avoids such sacrifices. He takes directly Krishna consciousness, consciousness and thereby prepares himself to return to Godhead. Okay, I have understood the scientific process, whatever has been mentioned. So that means the person, human being, comes back to earth and lives again as a human being only, is it not? That's what is explained.
From heavenly planets. He's not coming as human being. He's assuming a form of human being afterwards.
Correct. What I'm telling is, again comes back in the process of rain, all these things that I understood. Ultimately, he takes birth as a human being. Yes,
that is the goal, because human body is the only body where we can understand.
Okay. Now, when that is the question, where is the question of some human being, because of his plus karma or negative karma, where is the question of he's taking birth as another animal? Because in the where different Puranas, different places it is mentioned, suppose if one commits a sin, he will take birth as some other dog or some other animal like that.
It is, why do you go to Puranas or anything? It is mentioned
not
in
Puranas,
Bhagavad
in some other, I'm telling
Yam
about some
Vapi
other Shastra.
Smaran Vapam. Yam Vapi. What verse is that in 8th chapter? Yam Vapi Smaran Bhavam. Tyajakte Antakale Varam. 6th verse. So Prabhu, please read 8th chapter. You're interested in karmic reactions. So
yes, karmic reactions. And what is the result of karmic reaction?
Verse number 6.
Verse number 6. Okay.
Whatever. Yam Vapi Smaran Bhavam Tyajati Ante Kalevaram Tam Eviti Kandaya Sattatan Bhava Bhavita. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. So if I am attached, or we studied in 13th chapter also.
Okay.
Karanam Gunasanga Asya Shadasha Janma Yonishu. According to my activity and desire, whatever I am associating myself with, I am going to get that kind of a body. If I am associating with me, myself right now with Krishna consciousness, then there's a chance I'm going to get a spiritual body. But if I am associating myself right now with drunkards, you know, people who are very addicted to alcohol drinking or drug addiction, then I'm going to get a body of an animal or a plant, because that's an impious activity.
I see. Okay. Thanks a lot, Hare Krishna Mataji. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, Priya.